Mercedes looked unstoppable, until Monaco exposed the one weakness they could not hide. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile has now found the detail that changes everything, because this is not just about George Russell, and it is not just about one bad weekend. It is about a car built around a powerful advantage, a rule decision that suddenly removed it, and a teammate rivalry that is starting to look far more dangerous than Mercedes wants to admit. Russell is 43 points behind Kimi Antonelli. Ferrari has suddenly taken control of Monaco practice. Hamilton and Leclerc are circling like they know Mercedes is vulnerable. And after the front wing investigation, the active aero ban, the radical winglet solution, and Russell's own pressure building inside the garage, one question is becoming impossible to ignore. Is Mercedes still in control, or has Monaco revealed the beginning of a crisis that started long before anyone noticed? Because the most important evidence is not the fine, not the practice pace, and not even the banned straight mode. The real evidence is hidden in the pattern. And once you see that pattern, Russell's words, Antonelli's rise, Toto Wolff's tension, and the FIA's Monaco decision all point to something much bigger. Subscribe to the channel. For months, Mercedes looked like the team everyone else was chasing. Not just fast. Not just efficient. Different. Their car did not simply win races because it had more power, or better tires, or cleaner strategy. It won because the entire machine seemed designed around the new shape of Formula One. The new power units. The new aerodynamic rules. The new way of creating speed. And at the center of all of it was one advantage that made Mercedes feel almost untouchable. Straight mode. To a casual fan, that might sound like just another technical name. Another system buried inside a sport full of complicated language. But this one matters. Because straight mode is the kind of advantage that can change how a whole race feels. It allows the wings to flatten on selected straights, helping the car cut through the air with less resistance. The old drag reduction system was gone, and in its place came something far more advanced, far more integrated, and far more important to the balance of the car. Think of it like running with a heavy jacket in strong wind. When the jacket is open, it catches the air. It pulls you back. Every step feels harder. But when you zip it tight, suddenly your body slices forward. You have not become stronger. The road has not changed. You are simply wasting less energy fighting the air. That is what Mercedes built around. And that is why the Monaco ruling hit so hard. Because the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile decided that at Monaco, straight mode could not be used at all. Not in one section. Not for one short burst. Not even through the parts of the circuit where teams might normally search for a tiny advantage. The reason was safety. Monaco is not like other circuits. It does not give drivers space to make mistakes. The walls are too close. The corners arrive too quickly. The tunnel exit is too sensitive. If a car becomes unstable there, even for a moment, the consequences can be brutal. So every car had to run locked in corner mode. Maximum downforce. Fixed wings. No active aerodynamic trick to escape the drag. No special straight-line weapon. No familiar rhythm. And for Mercedes, that was not just a rule change. It was a forced identity change. Because when a car is designed around a strength, removing that strength does not simply make it slower. It changes the way the driver feels the car. It changes how engineers prepare the setup. It changes how confident the team can be when the circuit asks the car to do something completely different. That is where George Russell enters the story. Because Russell did not arrive in Monaco as a relaxed driver with a comfortable championship lead. He arrived carrying pressure from every direction. Kimi Antonelli was already 43 points ahead. A 19-year-old rookie had won 4 of the first 5 races. Mercedes had won everything, but inside that success, Russell was the driver being forced to chase. And that creates a strange kind of pressure. From the outside, everything looks perfect. The team is winning. The car is strong. The championship is under control. But inside the garage, the question becomes sharper. Why is one driver flying, while the other is falling behind? That is the part Mercedes cannot easily hide. A dominant car does not remove tension between teammates. Sometimes, it makes it worse. Because when the car is capable of winning, every lost point feels personal. Every qualifying gap feels louder. Every strategy decision carries more weight. Russell knows this. Antonelli knows this. And Toto Wolff knows this better than anyone. That is why the Canadian Grand Prix mattered so much before Monaco even began. Russell and Antonelli had already touched at turn 1 in the sprint race. Antonelli was pushed wide. He went across the grass. He called the move very naughty over the radio, and asked for a penalty. That was not just a racing incident. It was the first public sign that the fight inside Mercedes had moved beyond polite competition. Toto had to intervene on the radio. Then the team needed a formal debrief afterward to clarify how both drivers were expected to race each other. When a team has to explain the rules of engagement to its own drivers, the tension is already real. But the story became even heavier when Russell's main race fell apart. He had been leading. He had a chance to change the emotional direction of the season. A win there could have slowed Antonelli's momentum. It could have reminded everyone that Russell was still the central figure at Mercedes. Instead, his race ended with a power unit failure. A battery issue caused by heat damage, according to Mercedes technical director James Allison. Antonelli won again. And suddenly, the gap was not just numbers on a standings table. It was a message. 43 points. A rookie in front. A veteran chasing. A team trying to smile while the pressure grows behind closed doors. Now bring that tension into Monaco, and everything becomes more dangerous. Because Monaco does not forgive frustration. A driver cannot simply force the issue the way he might on a wider track. There is no room to recover from a bad lunge. No long straight to reset the race. No easy overtaking chance to fix a poor qualifying session. At Monaco, pressure becomes physical. It sits in the steering wheel. It sits in the brake pedal. It sits in the tiny gap between the car and the barrier. And Russell entered that environment saying he had nothing to lose. That sentence sounds powerful. It sounds brave. It sounds like a driver freeing himself from fear. But there is another side to it. A driver with nothing to lose can become extremely dangerous, especially when the driver next to him has everything to protect. Antonelli has the championship lead. Russell has the urgency. Antonelli can afford to think long-term. Russell may feel he needs to strike now. And here is where the FIA ruling changes the whole emotional balance of the weekend. By banning straight mode, the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile did not just slow Mercedes down. It may have removed the conditions that helped Antonelli look so comfortable in the early part of the season. The car was now in a different window. The weekend demanded different instincts. The advantage was no longer as clean, no longer as automatic, no longer as deeply connected to the system Mercedes had mastered. That could hurt Russell. Or it could give him the opening he has been waiting for. Because when a car becomes harder to understand, experience starts to matter more. When the circuit becomes more unpredictable, judgment becomes more valuable. When the team loses its favorite weapon, the driver who can adapt fastest suddenly has a chance to rewrite the story. And that is why Block 1 of this crisis is not really about a wing. It is about pressure. A technical ruling created the conditions. Monaco created the danger. Antonelli created the championship threat. Russell's bad luck created the emotional wound. And Mercedes now has to manage all of it while Ferrari looks stronger than it has all season at exactly the wrong track. That is the foundation of the crisis. Mercedes did not arrive in Monaco weak. They arrived exposed. And there is a massive difference. Because a weak team knows it is in trouble. It lowers expectations. It protects itself. An exposed team still believes it should win, but suddenly everyone can see where the armor is thin. That is what makes the next part so important. The FIA had already examined Mercedes once over the front wing. They had already looked at the way the car changed shape, the way the wing moved, the way the system behaved under the new rules. Mercedes was cleared. But being cleared does not always erase suspicion. And when the same team arrives at Monaco with its biggest aerodynamic advantage band, and then brings a radical new winglet solution to recover performance, the paddock starts looking again. Not because guilt has been proven. Because in Formula 1, curiosity is never neutral. It is the beginning of pressure. And this is where the story becomes more dangerous for Mercedes. Because the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile had already looked closely at their car once. Not casually. Not from a distance. The first major controversy came after the Chinese Grand Prix, when Mercedes had delivered the kind of result that makes rivals uncomfortable. A dominant 1-2 finish. Total control. The sort of weekend that does not just win points, but forces every other team to ask the same question. How are they doing this? Ferrari did not like what it saw. The concern centered on the Mercedes front wing, and more specifically, how that wing was moving under the new active aerodynamic rules. In this new era, moving wings were no longer automatically suspicious. Movement was part of the design. Movement was part of the rulebook. But the rulebook still had limits. And those limits were measured in milliseconds. The regulation required the wing to move between its states within 400 milliseconds. Less than half a second. So fast that, to the human eye, it almost feels instant. But footage appeared to suggest something different. The wing seemed to take longer to complete its movement. In some observations, as much as 800 milliseconds. Double the legal window. That sounds like a tiny difference. But in Formula 1, tiny differences are where championships hide. 400 milliseconds can be the gap between a legal system and a suspicious one. It can be the difference between a clever design and a design that forces the governing body to ask uncomfortable questions. And Ferrari's concern went even deeper. The theory was not simply that the Mercedes wing moved too slowly. The fear was that it might have been moving in two phases. First, a quick movement, fast enough to satisfy the sensors. Then, a slower second movement, after the system had already passed the moment when it was being checked. Imagine a student taking a test while the teacher is watching, writing the correct answer in the first second, then quietly changing the rest when the teacher turns away. That is why the accusation carried such weight. Because if a system was designed to behave one way while being monitored, and another way afterward, then the issue would not just be performance. It would be trust. That is why this investigation mattered so much. Not because Mercedes was instantly guilty. Not because the result was already decided. But because the question itself was dangerous. Had Mercedes created a wing that simply behaved unexpectedly under air pressure, or had they found a way to make the car appear compliant while gaining something extra after the check was over? That is the kind of question that can follow a team long after the official answer arrives. And the official answer did arrive. The investigation concluded that the slow secondary movement was not deliberate deception. It was caused by a miscalculation. Mercedes had underestimated the aerodynamic forces involved when switching wing modes. In plain English, the air was pushing back differently than expected. The team also put serious effort into correcting the issue, and that mattered. Because if a team is trying to hide something, it does not usually work openly to remove the behavior that made people suspicious. That effort helped convince the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile that there was no nefarious intent. So Mercedes escaped the nightmare scenario. No disqualification. No retroactive punishment. No erased results from China or Australia. On paper, they survived. But in Formula 1, surviving an investigation is not the same thing as escaping its consequences. Because once rivals know where to look, they keep looking. And this is exactly why Monaco felt so loaded. The same team that had already been questioned over active aerodynamic behavior arrived at a circuit where active aerodynamics had now been banned completely. The same car that dominated with straight mode was now forced to run without it. The same Mercedes engineers who had been under scrutiny now had to find performance in a completely different way. And they did. But not quietly. With straight mode banned, one part of the rear wing system suddenly became useless for the weekend. The actuator, the component normally linked to moving the wing, no longer had its normal job. Since nothing was allowed to move, the space around that system became available for a new idea. Red Bull found one. Mercedes found an even more aggressive one. They replaced the traditional actuator fairing with a tree-like support structure carrying multiple small wing elements. Tiny pieces. Microflaps. Little surfaces designed to add downforce in a place where every bit of grip matters. To someone outside Formula 1, that may sound almost ridiculous. A few tiny winglets on a support structure. How much could that really change? But Monaco is not about huge gains. Monaco is about inches. It is about confidence. It is about the difference between brushing the wall and opening the steering wheel at the perfect moment. A small increase in rear stability can give a driver the belief to attack one corner harder, and that can shape an entire lap. So the idea made sense. It was clever. It was legal within the allowed aerodynamic areas. But it also carried a problem Mercedes could not ignore. It made them visible again. And visibility is dangerous when a team has already been examined. Because every clever Mercedes solution now exists under a brighter light. Every unusual shape invites rivals to study it. Every performance gain creates a fresh question. And every question lands in a garage already dealing with something even more unstable than aerodynamics. Two drivers moving toward conflict. That is what makes the timing so brutal. If Mercedes had arrived in Monaco with calm drivers, a comfortable hierarchy, and no recent controversy, the winglet solution would have looked like normal innovation. A smart team adapting to a strange circuit. Nothing more.